Night in Miami is directed by Regina King, and it is adapted from a play by Kemp Powers. It is a fictionalized account of a night in 1964 in which four friends, Cassius Clay, Jim Brown, Malcolm X, and Sam Cooke, meet up to celebrate Clay's title win over Sonny Liston. Before the night's end, a wide range of emotions are shared as they discuss the civil rights movement and how each of them are vital to the changes necessary in our country. My name is Javon,
I'm Kevin.
and We Saw That. To begin, Kevin, what were some of your thoughts when you first heard of the movie? And if you will, give us a bit of an overall idea about how you felt about everything.
The first thing I noticed was when it was announced that Regina King was directing. I believe I'd heard that she had directed before, but I didn't know what she had done before. So I was really glad to hear her still doing stuff. Because of course I remember her. Many of us probably remember her from the 227 days. But,
Brenda.
Right. But I'm glad that she's doing what she's doing. So I was really glad to know about it. And I didn't really know much about it, but I decided to just go ahead and watch it now. And I must say, I'm glad I did see it.
Same here. It was two films last year that I knew I was going to want to see in 2021. One of them is called American Skin, and the other one is called Judas and the Black Messiah. One night I was watching movie reviews, and in particular, I was looking at a movie reviewer named Chris Stuckman, and he was reviewing a group of films that were released to the TIFF Film Festival, which is the Toronto International Film Festival. As he began to review a film called One Night in Miami, I was spellbound. I couldn't believe, first of all, that Regina King had actually gotten behind the camera to put something together. And just from what he was saying, it was like you would be transported back into 1964 around the time of Cassius winning his title, and me not really knowing that all four of the key players knew each other at the same time. It could be in the same place. I knew about Cassius Clay and Sam Cooke, and I also knew about Malcolm X, of course, and Cassius Clay. But I didn't know how Jim Brown fit into that whole scheme of things. So I was excited to see how those four huge personalities would all be under the same roof in the same room, and to bounce any ideas about anything that they wish to discuss while they were there. I couldn't believe that it was something that would be about the civil rights movement, among other things. And I felt that it was refreshing once I finally did get a chance to see it, that it was almost like me and a group of my friends in a room just talking, where you laugh and joke, you kind of rib each other a little bit, you might joke, but things can sometimes get serious, but not to the point where you can't come back from anything you may have said or done. So I really appreciated the camaraderie that was shown through all of the people, in there that day, and I think that it really was a great job by Regina King to put this all together. All right, to go in the order of our four players, our key players, and I'll go in the order that they were brought to us in the actual film. I believe that we started with Cassius Clay, who was played by Eli Gorey. And just to tell you a little bit, this was the time in which Clay had just won his fight against Henry Cooper and was getting ready to go up against Sonny Liston. He is like a live wire with no insulation. And at 22 years of age, he is on his way to become what many would consider to be the greatest of all time. He is also getting ready to reveal his decision to join the Nation of Islam by becoming a Muslim, and he's nervous about it. Kev, how did you feel about Eli Gorey and his role as Cassius Clay?
So I've only seen like a little bit of Muhammad Ali and Cassius Clay, but I think Eli Gorey nailed that portrayal.
Yes.
I feel like you could close your eyes and like that's him. That's Muhammad Ali. And of course, the mannerisms as well, because I know Muhammad Ali was given to like bugging his eyes out when he would say stuff, and
Right.
the actor did the same thing.
Yes.
So I feel that was a really great portrayal. And even though some of the things that were talked about in this movie, I know it's fictionalized, but I could definitely see Muhammad Ali saying those things the way
Yes.
that the actor portrayed them. That's how well I think he did. Um, just acting like him, acting like we've seen him to be, especially in his youth, in his heyday.
It's funny because the way that Will Smith portrayed him in the film Ali was so on point that I thought that no one else would ever be able to encapsulate the way that Ali was such a incredible personality and almost like exuded that confidence and that bravado that he had even when the cameras weren't on him. And I was surprised to find that Eli not only was able to speak in his cadence and with the tone that he did, but as you said before, the way that some of those mannerisms almost made it like he was channeling him somehow. Um, and I also like the way that he bounced off of the other players in the movie so that he wasn't at any time shown up by any of their performances. Um, this is a young man who I'm sure we will be seeing in time to come. And I know he's done some things here and there. So I'm very interested to see where his career goes after that. Um, the next would be Leslie Odom Jr. as Sam Cooke. Now he's very successful. At the time, he is like staying at the Fountain Blue Hotel in Miami, Florida, with his wife Barbara. He owns a label and signs new talent. He also owns his masters, and he also has money coming in from royalties from songwriting credentials. When we find him, he's bombed at the Copacabana, and I'm sure that is something that for any young talent that sees the success that you can have after doing something that monumental. I'm sure that in real life that had to wreck some of his confidence, but being Sam Cooke and being the crooner and being the powerful voice that he is, I'm sure that he was able to bounce off of that. But he did wish that his music could be more meaningful, and in particular to our causes as Black people. How did you feel about Leslie Odom Jr. as Sam Cooke?
So I knew the actor could sing from seeing Hamilton.
Yes, yes.
I didn't know how well he could sing though, because I just didn't know, because the Hamilton was like rap and singing too. But
Right.
I ain't know this is another actor where you close your eyes and I mean he sounds very very much like Sam Cooke.
Incredibly so.
And I'm a fan of Sam Cooke, well, especially Sam Cooke during his gospel period, which they talked about in the film. And
Yes.
the group that I sing with, we sang quite a few of his gospel songs. So
Wow.
close my eyes and I'm like, he sounds very, very much like Sam Cooke. Um,
Yes.
so I think we'll get into a little more about this later, but especially when the character in the film was talking about his business ideals and what that meant to him, and how well or how not well he was a soldier for the Black cause in how he ran his business. It made me
Yes.
want to learn, actually this movie in general made me want to learn more about all four characters,
Certainly.
because I want to know like how well they were in real life, how well that informed the roles they were given in this film. But especially Sam Cooke in the business side, because I know more about Sam Cooke's gospel than his non-gospel stuff. So that made me want to learn more about that, just to see, especially the angle when he was talking with Malcolm X about
Yes.
whether or not he was, I guess, Black enough, and whether he was being Black enough through his art. So that made
Right.
me want to learn more about him that way.
I've followed Sam Cooke myself throughout finding out about his career as I got older, and noticed a bit of the change where he went from the gospel side to what they would maybe consider secular music, R&B and songs about love and everything. And that pivotal turn where the song that I'm sure we'll discuss later came into play and everything after it. And his ability to um, bring people together for this cause with those songs that were written so accordingly to what was going on out in the streets and the tone of what was being felt throughout society at that time. Um, Leslie Odom, I thought, killed it when it came to say I have things like Blu-rays and concerts and DVDs and interviews with Sam Cooke and everything, and the way that he moved and the way that he in particular moved his hands when he sung, the way like they said later in the film about how he caressed the microphone, those little things like that, I was surprised to see that Leslie had adopted to the letter, and it made what he was doing on the screen not only that much more believable, but for people who I would imagine hardly know who Sam Cooke is, um, kind of as you said, would in their case would probably want to explore the things that he really did in real life and the footage of him, whether it would be on YouTube or any other way that you can find some of his live performances. I really value the way that Leslie Odom brought not only the softer side of Sam, but also the side that you may not have known about him drinking from time to time, him smoking cigarettes, him being able to throw a four-letter word out at you if he had his back against the wall or felt like he was cornered. Although being married, his wanting to party and wanting to hang out late and wanting to enjoy the nightlife and everything. And so his was one, I feel, of the most colorful characters in a group of men that were already high in stature with the different ways of what they brought to their roles. I really appreciated what Leslie brought. We're then introduced to Jim Brown, portrayed by Aldous Hodge. Jim Brown is fearless and never bites his tongue. If you were going in a situation where you were outnumbered or you were afraid for your life, you would want to bring Jim with you. He's easily the most powerful person in the room at any time, and not just because of physical strength, but also just because of his focus and how keyed into who he is as a person. And how that comes to play with everything that he does, everything that he says, and everything that he lives for. How did you feel about Aldous Hodge portraying Jim Brown?
So I just want to say that I really appreciate how the movie brought out the individual issues that each of the people they were portraying was going through, and it made me want to have more from Jim Brown.
Yes.
Because I feel his part of this movie kind of took a backseat to the other three, and I'll
Sure.
get into more of that later.
Okay.
But it may just be that Jim Brown ain't that flashy a guy.
Right.
So maybe don't worry about that. But that's kind of what I wanted, because I felt there was a lot of attention, more attention, especially on what they have to say with the other three guys. Than this one. And in this case, again, it made me want to learn more about him, especially him leaving the NFL to pursue the acting career. I wanted to learn more about that based on what they showed in this movie.
Yes, there are a lot of movies in my collection and in the library that I have that he's in. And for this to be a connection between, I guess, for me, when he decided that he had played enough with football and wanted to take things to another influence, me knowing everything that came after that decision, knowing a lot of those movies, a lot of those that I've seen, a lot of those that I watch and rewatch, and the way that he has come up as an actor makes me just know that sometimes, even when you're at the top of your game, if you feel that there's something else that you may be called to do, sometimes you have to not listen to the naysayers and the people who may talk bad about you or think that that's not the right way to go, because if it's in your heart, then it's going to be the right decision and you're going to be able to shine no matter whatever it is. And he is a living example of that. Also, as I said before, his ability to be so stoic at times, his ability to speak when it was important or speak when he had something to say. It seemed as if in through all things, through interviews with him in real life, through different points in his life, thus far, it seems like he's not a person who wastes words. And that's not something that you found common in that heyday with men and women in our community that were celebrities. You found that they were easy to be, sometimes influenced. They were the happiest when they had the cameras on them, when they were being interviewed, and when they were the cause of attention. So to find someone who seemed almost like a battle axe when it came to just that inner strength and that will to win and that will to remain who he knew he was supposed to be. There's something that is just is a treasure to, I guess, just to his legacy and to who he is as a person. Last but not least, we have Kingsley Ben-Adir as Malcolm X. We meet Brother Malcolm at the time in which he wishes to leave the Nation of Islam. He he is understandably paranoid and in fear of his safety, and around the time that he is feeling like people are out to get him, and he can sense that his time is near. His smile, it seems, is a mask that shields the complexity of his feelings and concerns that he possesses about the struggles of our people. But he has hope, and his hope is Jim Brown, Sam Cooke, and Cassius Clay. How do you feel about Kingsley Ben-Adir as Brother Malcolm X?
So I think he did a really good job. I guess I would say maybe talking like Malcolm X, although I have, I think of the documentaries I've seen with Malcolm X in them. And so
Yes.
with this actor, unfortunately, it almost seemed like someone playing Obama playing Malcolm X.
Oh.
And that's just down to, I guess, the pitch of his voice.
Okay.
It took me a little bit to get past. Not that I don't believe that he was doing a very good job in portraying Malcolm X. Definitely, like you were saying, like someone who feels the weight of the world on their shoulders,
Yes.
feeling that their chapter is about to end. That did come through very effectively. So even though he kind of sounded like Obama to me, but the acting definitely was very true and very believable.
He added, in my opinion, the perfect ingredient for those other three personalities. And I would imagine in real life, it was the same way. And that was only, I guess, tempered a bit about the fact that he had such a great cloud over his head with, in some weird mystical way, knowing what his fate was leading him towards. And I wonder how that would be to be in a room of your friends and have that burden in the back of your mind, but to still, as I said before, try to smile through the pain and try to remain hopeful and remain steadfast in spite of knowing at any moment anything could happen that would have dire consequences to your very existence. What I really appreciated about Kingsley's performance was you always had the sense that he had his wheels turning. There was never a time in the movie that he didn't seem as though his brain was processing the next step or the next word or the next path or the next thing that he wanted to either process or relay to the rest of his peers. Um, I don't think there was ever a time that he reacted or did something just because it was the spur of the moment. And more times, if that would happen, or if you would think that that was what was going on with him, he would quickly kind of put his head in his hands and almost lament over what he had just said or done. Um, and so he seemed to be so encapsulated in thought. And while the rest of them were free to laugh and joke and to carry on as they did, he was the one that not only had a reason for them being there, but also had instructions almost for them, because he knew that his time wasn't long. One of my biggest thoughts on this whole film is to have a question as powerful as, what are you doing for your cause and for our people, handled by four of the biggest names in our culture, is a discussion that we each should pull up a chair and participate in. It's something that should be at the forefront of every one of our minds, and especially at around a time like this, in the case of before Black History Month, and with today being Dr. King's celebrated birthday, there should be in all of us an idea of wanting to study the lives that have come before us and the ways that they have paved towards making things more desirable for us here, and how we will move our feet to make a way for the generations to come behind us. So I thought that this was a very powerful, not only script and screenplay, and I would love to see that play that this was based on. But again, this was so eye-opening because of the weight of the messages that it contained. And I have seen this film real quick 3 times, with today being the third. And so I'm sure that I'll be watching it many, 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 many more times. But I really did think that that question about what is it that you do for your people and for your culture is such a paramount question to raise to every single one of us. What did you feel about any aspect of the film?
So towards the end, when Malcolm X was getting on Sam Cooke's case
Yes.
about, what are you doing with this art?
Yeah.
Why pander? It's funny. I felt like he was speaking directly to me.
Oh,
So it kind
wow.
of makes me think. It kind of makes me think. Dang, what? It's like I felt like I was almost being held accountable the way that Malcolm X was trying to hold Sam Cooke
Yes.
accountable for
Yes.
the output, the end result of what he was doing that was making himself money, but
Yeah.
what's it doing for anybody else? So
Mhm.
that's kind of how I felt.
Wow.
It did seem that in this movie that Malcolm X was kind of like the center of the movie, especially in determining, look, this is what's at stake.
Yes.
And everyone else is kind of just reacting to that, throwing those cards on the table,
Right.
where he is raising the bar, where he's holding everybody accountable. So that's kind of just how I felt about that moment, especially towards the end of when temperance started flaring.
Yes. Yes. Um, it really did seem like Malcolm was at the center of almost everything that was going on. And the times that he would leave the room were times where that weight was almost lifted out. And they begin to be almost in some way like kids again, where Malcolm is jumping up. I mean, Muhammad Ali is jumping up and down Cassius Clay on top of the bed and acting like, a teenager, which he was 22 years old. So he still had that youth. But Malcolm had a sense with him of, there's no fun and games tonight. The fun and games will be more concerning us just having a conversation about where we are. I'm glad that the brother Cassius just won his title. We knew that he could. Now let's sit in this room. We're not going to have any women. We're not going to have any booze. We're not going to have any, anything else. Let's just have our minds and be open and be able to express how we feel about the events going forth from here. Almost to the point that a lot of them were surprised once they got there, that they felt almost like they were locked in a room where there was no party going on. And so I can only imagine how that would feel after you're saying that you're going to celebrate some big event, and instead the celebration is, all right, let's sit down and let's just chop it up for a little bit.
Right.
It seems like the film certainly is driven by dialogue, as well as the sum of its key players. And there are not that many of those films coming from African American people around this time. Sometimes it could be more towards action stars, more towards as in the case of Superfly, redoing black exploitation in the past. But for something that you really want to sit down and reflect on where we are going as people, your ones like Selma, your ones like Fences, things like that are the ones that catch my attention, just as this does, and I do believe that we need more like this, because these are the ones that are thought provoking and that build conversation, conversation starters, and we need to have those as much as possible, just to touch bases with each other on how things are and what we wish them to be.
In general, like I said, we know this is a fictionalized account, but
Yes.
I really believed that these four people were friends, that they had
Certainly.
spent some time with each other, that they knew about each other, that they knew what each other was about, and that's why they could call each other to account
Yes.
based on what they believed.
Yes.
Like I said, even though I did note that there was more attention paid to some than others, I really did believe that this could have, and it's obvious that this is a play, but
Yes.
it did, I think, go about like I think a real conversation might go between four people at as famous as they were at that stature.
Yeah, it's got to be a real blessing when you have three other friends that are as successful in one way or another, to where things like money and issues like that don't come in the way of who you are in relation to one another. And I felt that in the four of them, there were no yes men. There were no people that just kind of took the background, as in, okay, your voice is stronger than mine, so let me just be quiet until I have to agree with whatever that you have to say. And it was really refreshing to be able to see those powerful ideologies all in one small environment, bouncing off of each other. It also is possible, and I've seen this with me and my boys many times. I'm sure that you have too, that when you are in close proximity and you're having conversations, you're not always going to agree. You're not always going to see things eye to eye. And when you do, it's paramount that you are able to sometimes have an argument, sometimes fight, and know that it's not going to wreck the whole fabric of who you all are, not only as a group, but individually. And with that, you're able to, just as you just said, be able to speak to your brothers like brothers, where you have brothers to where sometimes you'll have a fallout and you might not speak again for a while, or you have brothers that you might knock yourselves around and then in 5 seconds say, okay, what's the next thing that we're going to do? Um, but it doesn't have to be every single time that someone that you're talking to doesn't agree with everything that you're saying. It has to be World War III. And with these four strong personalities, any one of them could have taken it to the point of, okay, well, I can just leave. I got enough money. I don't have to be around you. Let's just be That's just in the way that things are. But for them to be able to stick it out, that was something that I was proud of, and that's something that I wish a lot of our younger brothers understood today. Doesn't always have to be run into some sort of a conflict that you can't come back from. It doesn't have to always be grabbing up your guns and everything else. Sometimes it's as simple as, even if we don't see eye to eye, even if at the end of this congregation we aren't able to rectify this situation, we can at least go away peacefully in the knowledge that I'm a man, you're a man, and we don't always have to see things through the same lens. So I really appreciated the way that Regina was able to add the sculpt, to be able to bring that to a head from these fine actors. I appreciated the way that the location was used. As we said before, it was a play, so the way that plays usually go, you're going to be in one setting or one environment, almost like Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, where for the majority of it, you're either in the room where they're going to be recording or you're in the room where they're going to be practicing. And so in these four walls, you have a chance of exploring everything that you can't get with a normal environment, for lack of a better word. Now you're stuck with these people and who they are and the way that they feel and what they're trying to relay. And so it's not as distracting as sometimes when you have lush scenery and backgrounds and rolling hills and explosions over here and everything else to kind of take you away from the words being said and what's being relayed. So I'm starting to find that whereas I've always enjoyed plays, it's now that they're really starting to hone down on my appreciation, because now I want to know what a character has to say. And now I want to know the weight of those words that are on that screenplay and on that script. So I'm really enjoying these new measures of our talent that are coming out of Hollywood. I really appreciate it.
Well, I think just the last thing, I do agree that it's important for people to see, especially young people, especially young men, to see, situations where it's okay for you to disagree, but it doesn't mean that you need to be enemies.
Amen.
Especially
Yes.
if, as in the case of this movie, you're actually working towards a common goal.
Right.
And I think what this bit of conflict resolution that happened in the movie, showed the men working at finding a way to reach that common goal, even though it was from maybe different perspectives. So I think that's an important skill to have and to develop. And I really did appreciate the way that was done here. That four Black men cannot agree, but it doesn't mean that someone has to die. It
Right.
doesn't mean they have to stay at each other's throats, because there were some blows thrown, but they don't have to stay on opposite sides.
That's right.
And they can come to a peaceful resolution once they recognize that they're not each other's enemies.
Yes.
That there are larger enemies that are outside of them, that they're actually all working in their own way to combat against, and not each other. So that's a thing I appreciate, taking away from the movie.
That's a major takeaway. I felt that the acting was one of the largest positives of this complete endeavor. Like I said, Eli Gorey, Aldous Hodge, Leslie Odom Jr., especially in my opinion, and Kingsley Ben-Adir, which was also in his own right sensational. The way that they came together really gave me a better appreciation for these four individuals, for Cassius, for Brother Jim Brown, for Sam Cooke, and for, of course, Brother Malcolm X. The directing, I thought, for Regina King's directorial debut was very good. I thought that it was very good. I liked the way that she blocked and framed some of her shots. I liked the way that that she put the focus not only on the person who was speaking at the time, but sometimes to take the camera away and show some of the little things like people going in the hotel room in different parts of the room to wash their hands or to just look in the mirror at themselves because everything was going on so much. I could see where any new director could have just taken the camera, set it in one spot in the room, and let them just chew away at it, and occasionally just turn over here or ease over to the left or do a little shaky hand or whatever. But instead, it was like she knew the measure of the material, and she knew where the camera's eye, i.e., the audience's eyes, needed to be during these discussions and during these proceedings. The script I thought was very good. Sometimes it's hard in a screenplay and in dialogue to write arguments. Sure, it's easy to do the joking and to do the comic relief, but when it comes time to really show how people express themselves, sometimes it's not easy to write words and have the actors argue over top of each other, and sometimes one person says something loud and the next person speak in return in a low voice. Those things can come straight from an actor or an actress, but it's based upon what's written on that blueprint and how they will be able to relay that and how they'll be able to perform. If there was a special ingredient in this, I would believe that it would be the number of messages that were just stacked on top of each other. Some things that I wrote down, some things like you said that were speaking directly to me, and some things that I nodded my head because either I had heard those or I had tried to actually teach or to talk with someone about it different times in my life. Um, and so with all of that, the last being, of course, the replay value. And like I said, if I've seen it 3 times already when it was released only 3 days ago, I think we know the answer to that. I'm going to give One Night in Miami a highly recommended. Um, if it had to be a number scale, I would say maybe a 9 out of 10. But um, I think, in my opinion, that you should definitely stop what you're doing, run out, get your subscription in order of Prime if you don't already have it. And sooner or later, I'm hoping and praying that it comes out on Blu-ray because I have to have this in the library. Highly recommended. Kev, what did you think about this film?
For the acting, I thought the acting was fantastic. A standout for me were Muhammad Ali and
Yes,
Sam Cooke. Just
yes,
so true to what I've seen. The script was decent. Like I said before, I really believe that this is a real set of conversations. The plot, and I would like the plot. I like the way it kind of went down. So I think it picked up in the middle. Once a difference of opinion started to come up, that's
yes,
when I really started to get interested, because that's when the characters started talking about what they believed,
yes,
and what they felt the others should be doing, and that's when the arguing set in. And I think that's where it really picked up for me. For rewatchability, like I had said, I want to watch other things about each 4 of these men. I
yes,
want to know more about them based on this conversation. The wild card for me would be the directing. I really appreciated how the scenery was able to change from just inside one hotel room, because
yes,
they had outside in the parking lot, on the
yes.
roof, in
On
the
the
bar,
roof. Yes,
and then the flashbacks to a couple concerts. Excellent,
yes,
and of course, I know it started in a boxing ring. So I thought that made it a little more seamless, and not just stuck in a room the whole time, which I really appreciated. So my final rating is I really liked it. I liked it a lot. I'd probably give it a high. We like I said, it makes me want to watch more things so I can
yes.
be even better informed about how all 4 of these men thought. And then I'd want to go back to the movie again to see how well what really happened lined up with this fictionalized account.
Gotcha, gotcha. So that sounds like a highly recommended for myself, and we liked it from Kevin. ladies and gentlemen, this is One Night in Miami. For those of you who have actually sat down with the film and wish that we speak in that we had a chance to speak a little bit more in detail about it, let's sit down for a little bit. Everyone else, if you haven't watched it, please stop what you're doing. We've given you a little something to go off, hopefully whetted your appetite a little bit. But we're now going to talk to some of the people who have enjoyed the film and speak about some of the key moments that we thought without any discretion. For me, Kev, to begin, I really like the way that the introductions were handled. And I thought in particular that we met all four of the individuals at times that were paramount to what was going to be experienced in the film. So for Ali, for Cassius, we met him just as he won against Henry Cooper, in which he was being so big headed and so arrogant that he practically lost the fight. But it was only because the time had ran out that he won by technicality. We met Sam Cooke at the time that he bombed at the Copacabana. And so, as we said before, with that being one of the high points of any singer's career around that time, I can understand how devastating that was. And when he went back to the room, the green room, for lack of a better word, after to kind of lick his wounds, the first person who came in and had something to say about him, he jumped on him. And I understood how that would put a big chip on his shoulder. And we're going to stop in a second with Jim Brown because the situation that he experienced with his family friend, I guess we'll say, where he was treated with racism, really was a slap in the face. Because after sitting down with this man and finding out that, of course, their families were known with each other, this man being a white man. To make a long story short, Jim found out that he was not allowed in the man's home because he was, as he put it, a nigger. How did you feel about any one of these so far? With the last, real quick, just being Malcolm, where he's speaking with Betty Shabazz about leaving the nation and everything that he hopes that Cassius may be able to help him with.
Well, I did notice that, like you mentioned, the beginning of the film has all four men go through like these low points.
Yes.
Which was an interesting, I guess, tone.
Yes.
To start it out with. So the part about Jim Brown again made me want to know a little bit more about his story. I feel like they brought that in the beginning,
yes,
and then they switched to other things, and
right,
then brought it in at the very end with, oh, hey, remember him? Let's catch up with him. Let's see how he's doing. Oh,
that's
yeah,
right.
He let the NFL. You know,
that's right.
And that's just the structure of the film. But that was something that I noticed that I would have wanted a little more of.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt like, especially in the middle, when the movie started to pick up, it kind of, for me, it became Malcolm X versus Sam Cooke.
Yeah.
I mean, but I imagine, knowing about these men and what they went through and what they've done, that probably would be something like that. But
certainly,
that's just kind of what I felt the movie was at that point in the middle. It was them two, hashing it out.
Yeah.
And Malcolm X and Jim Brown, watching from the sidelines. Okay. So I guess that would be my only criticism. Just that's kind of where it went. But I mean, if you've got this major message, and if it's not going to come from all four people, then I guess those two were the two where it should come from. Especially with what I was told that Sam Cooke being contemporary of MLK, and how MLK and Malcolm X would not have seen eye to eye.
That's right.
Probably a lot of things that they were both in the struggle, but coming at it from different perspectives, and probably two different ends. So I think it is appropriate that Sam Cooke and Malcolm X were the two big ones, but it just made me wonder, well, what about these other two? Especially, Muhammad Ali, who's larger than life anywhere.
Exactly.
And in this movie, there were portions where, he was sitting watching and fine. And I'm sure that he was able to do that kind of thing. But that's just what I noted. There was a lot of focus on Malcolm X and Sam Cooke. I think at a little bit to the detriment of the other two characters, but I think they were the appropriate ones to carry forth this message of what are you doing with your life?
Sure.
And is it in service to anybody but yourself?
Right. Yeah, that was the that seemed to be the thought that covered the two of them in particular, because Sam Cooke at that time, I guess I can be honest and say maybe his effect in our struggle, I don't want to use the word that Malcolm uses, and you could be doing more, because it seems like it's for every person on their own to judge where they are and what sword they should take up in the fight. I do understand some people saying if you're famous and you're not doing anything right now, you need to be stepped over. Um, and I mean, that's to put it into reality. Don Lemon was saying that recently about the events of what was going on with the rioting and with everything that was happening with politics, calling people out by name. And so there is a bit of a dilemma on how do you feel about that. Are you required to take part in the fight because you wear the skin and because you have some monochrome of success? And so seeing that the Sam was at the moment that he wasn't, and that secretly we find out he wanted to, in a weird way, it almost seems like fate delivered them to that room. And had it not been for Malcolm to draw his sword up against him and say, I feel that you want to do this, but you're not, so I'm going to force it out of you, we never would have got a change gonna come. We never would have got those songs that he made after that until the moment that he passed, that were so powerful in oppression and in our civil rights struggles. Another thing was, or I guess on a separate note, I appreciated the fact that Cassius had to have Malcolm to pray with before his fight. And I like the way that that Regina filmed with the score of the movie, them getting on their knees and praying together before he wound up winning that championship fight. And I knew that they had done that, but I had never, of course, been able to be a fly on the wall to see how that happened. So I appreciated finally being able to see that Cassius was basically saying, I can't fight until I sit down and pray with you. And so I think that added a bit more of that brotherhood that the two of them shared, that connected them to everything that was going to happen with them as a whole when they got back together. How about after the fight in the room at the Hampton house, when Ali is like bouncing off the ceiling like a little kid, and this is the moment from like the trailer where he's like, I don't even have scratch on my foot. Oh my goodness. And he's looking in the mirror and they all run up to him like, what's wrong? He's like, why am I so pretty?
Again, credit to the actor.
Yes,
I absolutely believe Muhammad Ali actually did something like that.
Right.
Somebody please find where he did that in real life, because I believe
exactly.
It
oh
and if
man,
it didn't happen, shame on us all.
Right.
that seemed like that was pulled out of a documentary somewhere.
Yes, it seems so real. so then you have the time that they're in the hotel room and they want to at least be able to eat a little bit or be able to drink a little something or crack a couple of beers or whatever. But Malcolm has put this all together, so he doesn't have any of that. And when he goes over to the refrigerator to see what he does have, he just has a box or two of vanilla ice cream. So now we fast forward to him and Sam arguing with each other. And when Jim Brown says to him, Malcolm, man, why will you please have some damn ice cream?
Yeah, see, once again, these four men were able to act like they were really friends.
Yes.
I believe that throughout the whole. I felt the whole movie was genuine.
Yes.
I really believe this is something that could have been happening. That just a conversation that went through its ups and downs from room to room, but it seemed like a real thing that was happening versus just a movie versus just a play.
Yeah, yeah. And I thought that that Sam really cut Malcolm when they were up on the roof. Like we said, that was when things really hit another level. And I think if they wouldn't have been on the roof when it all started, they would have blown the roof off of the motel.
Right.
Malcolm thinks that Sam should use his voice for the cause and not just for singing for white folks. So Sam counters, look around. Which one of us doesn't belong? I mean, you don't play football, you don't box, you don't play sports, you don't sing. Which one of us doesn't belong? And I'm like, oh no, you didn't. And I knew from there, it's like, okay, the gloves are off. And I think that is around close to that was when Jim Brown said something to the effect of, y'all bringing out the knives, and if I get cut, I'm fitting to hurt somebody. So I'm like, yeah, anytime you tell one of your boys something like that, you know, you don't even belong with the rest of us. And I think he even hinted towards saying something like, we're all celebrities, and you seem to be just a fan who is attracted by celebrities. And so I thought that was, you know, they were really, really cutting it close then. So then if you remember, they go back downstairs into the room. And now in the height of the argument, Malcolm walks over to the record player and says, all right, Sam, let's see what some of your songs say about the struggle and everything. And he played a song of Sam's, and it was about love or whatever it was. And Sam is just looking like, wow, you know. Then he cuts that one short and puts on another one. And again, it's about love and baby please or whatever. And Sam is just looking like, wow. And Malcolm says, I mean, you're just a wind-up toy in some music box, or a monkey dancing around for an organ grinder to them. And I'm like, man. I mean, man, just some of these choice words. How did you feel about just the extremes that the characters were written to go, and how they were still somehow able to corral it back by the end?
Well, I definitely agree, like with what Jim Brown was saying when y'all took the knives out.
Yeah.
It was some harsh words there.
Yeah.
So especially when Malcolm was going in on Sam Cooke, because because I think it brings up some of the pressures that a professional musician has. You know, you have, I mean, it's issues of whether or not you're writing your own music. Are you making money off of it? Is this music that you're performing, do you believe it? Or are you just getting paid? Do you have a reliable way to turn out hit after hit? And do they mean anything to you? And what if you put yourself out there and people don't like it anyway? Or what if what's really within your heart isn't putting bread on the table? You know, I thought of all of those things because they brought them all up. Going through all the different things that Sam Cooke was going through in this movie. So I really appreciated that as a musician. Not that I'm professional, but having touched a little of those things, there's different things that I identify with. And you know, there's also the question of what do you do with your platform? If you have a platform,
right,
what are you then going to do with it? If that platform affords you an undue amount of influence, what responsibilities do you have to actually get involved? You know, like many others might already be doing, but won't necessarily get the recognition that you get. And what kind of weight does that put on your shoulders? What does that change about the way that you go about your life, especially if you live your life on display?
Yes.
I mean, everything you're doing is under the microscope. And if there are causes that you actually believe in, how can that affect your bottom line? And what are you willing to potentially sacrifice if you want to go beyond just a pretty face who's making money?
Right.
So quite thought-provoking, and that's why I appreciated that all of that thought-provoking part, you know, came through Sam Cooke as a musician.
Yes.
Which is why I like that he was one of the characters chosen to be a part of this movie, because those are things that all of us actually can identify with. So I really, really like that.
Yeah, Jim Brown said that that Sam was the most financially secure of the four of them. And I liked when Sam gave the story to Malcolm about his protege who had written the song that the Rolling Stones covered, and about the process of how you can write a song. Someone can come over who's famous and say, "Hey, I want to sing that song." And you would first feel like something has been stolen from you. But Sam was smart enough to say no, to his protege, no, let him take it, let them do what they need to do with it. It wound up becoming a success, and as a result, his label and his company gets royalties every time, as he put it, a girl goes into a record bar and purchases that record or plays that song. And so he ended that thought by saying, everybody talks about wanting a piece of the pie. I don't. I want the whole recipe. I was like, whoa, good night.
So we know of a bunch of acts that maybe came up in like the 90s who it's like almost wish they would have had the business sense.
Yes.
Sam Cooke had, especially with owning your own output.
Yes.
We've heard about many groups that make it huge and they broke.
Exactly.
It's like, ooh, it was like a master class of what not to do
right
on your way to being famous, because what will it matter if you can't even provide for yourself? Even if you're at the top of being known, got all the awards, all the Grammys, all the recognition, and you're still struggling.
Right.
So that was, I thought that was a very good little piece in there where Sam Cooke was talking about, making money off of other people playing his songs.
Yes.
He's still making that money.
Yeah.
He was able to be shrewd enough to get the right deals in place, sign the right contracts, I guess get the right agent, who knows.
Yes.
So that he was still being taken care of, regardless of whether he was doing a song or not.
Yeah, because at the end, his protege came back to him like, "Oh, did they need any more songs from me to write?" And I would have been the same way. You look at your mailbox and checks just keep popping up. You didn't even have to do anything beyond pin it and get it copywritten, and they'll do the work for you. Right. But you have to be smart enough, like Sam was, to even be able to pull off a maneuver like that.
Something my wife told me about when we watched it was that, and again, something made me want to watch something else. This made me want to watch the documentary on Netflix now of the 2 killings of Sam Cooke, because it
was phenomenal.
In it, I'm told that some of Sam Cooke's business sense was on display in that as well. And yes. This made me want to see that. Because again, I am more acquainted with the gospel singing, and there's a whole other part of him that I'm not yet acquainted with. And so seeing this again made me want to learn more about the full picture of Sam Cooke.
Certainly. Another part that sticks out in my mind is Malcolm rushing back over to his trusty record player. And this time, it's funny because it seemed like every time he wanted to play a song or something, it was just to cut him down, cut Sam down another way. But he played a song by Bob Dylan called "Blowing in the Wind." And as soon as that first couple of melodies of the song came on, just like Sam Cooke, I followed Bob Dylan for a while. I've got the concerts, I've got the DVDs and everything. So I know that song and its lyrics inside and out. And the second that first part of the song came on, I was like, "Oh, checkmate. Are you serious?" And now Malcolm is mockingly kind of dancing while the lyrics are going, and Sam is just crumbling up in his chair, because the lyrics in a lot of ways are showing you, just like what Malcolm said. As Malcolm put it now, and I quote, "Here's a white boy from Minnesota that's speaking war for our causes, and his song is higher on the charts than anything you've ever done." And that's when Sam just got mad and got up and stormed out of the room. And I'm like, wow. And then when you found out later on that Sam really did feel jealous about that song, because he felt like he should have written it himself. And I wonder if that back then that we didn't get to see was the factor that made him start to write Change Gonna Come. Mm-hmm. And so I really like the way that they did that. So Sam runs out of the room, and then Cassius runs out behind him to make sure he doesn't get in the car and hurt himself, because I think he may have drank a little bit out of the little hooch bottle or whatever that he had stashed in his guitar case. So when they come back in, Malcolm says, Sam, why do we seem to have so much of a problem? And I like the way that this was written. Sam says, I have a problem with who you've become, basically. Now you're acting in private the way that you act in front of the camera. And Malcolm says, Sam, I've always been this person. And Sam said, and it was so eloquent, maybe, but you were also always so much more. And the way that he just left that last word of that line, and the way that you could just sense the air being sucked out of that, because what do you say when someone tells you to your face, the person who you used to be, the fun, caring, happy-go-lucky, friendly, you can be determined, sure you can be militant, sure you can be all about your cause, but you used to be so much more when you were so much less complex. And so I want to get your opinion on this, because this was a high note for me. This was almost what elevated me to the highly recommended, if I wasn't already there. It's the scene where Malcolm says, Sam, do you remember how we met? And first of all, it's Malcolm telling Sam that not only had he gone to see him perform before, he'd gone to see 5 of his performances. And you could see the way that Sam just kind of lit up. It was like he was smiling on the inside, because someone who he thought the world of had actually known all about his career, and they just hadn't had a chance to sit down and talk about it. But he tells about this time that Sam was singing in Boston, and the sound system cut out. And there's this scene, if you all remember that saw the film, and Kevin, where slowly but surely Sam walks over to the audience and whispers that they know the song that's the Chain Gang song. And it's a song where you're stomping your feet and you could feel the rhythm, I would imagine, almost in like the pit of your stomach. And it's one of those songs, one of those Negro songs from us, singing to just kind of put a smile on our faces in spite of what was going on around us. But when the audience started to stomp their feet, and he's on the stage stomping his feet, and he slowly starts to sing, something started to well up inside of me. And when he got to the point that they were stomping enough that he didn't have to stomp anymore, and he could just add the vocals, in between the way that he was singing, the way the audience was doing their thing, the sound design of the actual film, and the way that Malcolm looked when he was getting ready to walk out of the room because he thought it was going to be a dud and then stopped, I was overwhelmed with emotion. How did you feel about that scene?
I agree. That was a beautiful scene.
Yes,
I would say that was my favorite part of the movie.
I think so too.
Especially as a musician.
Yes.
I mean, and you know this too. Equipment failing you. Oh, that's a nightmare.
Yes. What do you do?
Nightmare.
Yes.
What do you do in that situation?
Yeah.
So that spoke to me on that level. Having performed before. And,
yes.
Having mics go out.
his people ran.
Right. And the band left like, whoa.
Right.
I ain't never seen that before. So that's wild. But that entire scene was beautiful. And especially like you said, the sound design, especially when they described about how when the Chain Gang song was well underway, but where Malcolm X was sitting, he couldn't really hear the vocals anymore. He just heard the chant. And in the movie, you can only hear the chant at this point. It's beautiful. It was beautiful. I was transfixed at that point, just like Malcolm was. So once again, this movie is making me is putting Malcolm in my face and making me identify with him, which is interesting.
Yes.
But I that was my favorite scene.
Oh my gosh.
It was beautiful, and it spoke to how Malcolm X and Sam Cooke were able to get back on better terms when they found that common ground that they had.
Exactly.
I thought it was beautiful for that as well, because that's what I was waiting for.
Yeah.
I was waiting for them to bury the hatchet.
Yes.
And it finally happened here when they when they both, had this meeting of the minds, and then Malcolm showed him, like you said, Malcolm showed him that he respected him, that he knew him.
Yes.
And that he was into his work.
Right.
And he was there with him at what could have been a low point, that he was able to turn around.
Right.
And that he was there the whole time. And so once again, they're not enemies. They're not against each other.
Right.
So a very beautiful scene.
Oh my goodness. So last but not least, the last on my agenda of things that I felt in the pit of my heart is the end scene where Sam is now at the Late Show on Johnny Carson. He sings a song and wraps it up and goes to sit down. And now during the interview, he's asked if he'll do one more song. And he says, yes, it's a song I've been working on, but I've never, really sang before out, however, but let's see how it goes. And I knew what he was going to sing. And the song hadn't been hinted around through the movie, but I knew it was going to be Change Gonna Come. And when the symphony, or lack thereof, kind of rose to give you that feeling that he, had to start it up, I all but stood up off my sofa like, oh my God, y'all gonna do this to me? And he hits, I was born by the river. And I'm like, yo, that's it. I'm done. Oh my goodness. And now they're smart enough to show you while he's singing, Cassius Clay becoming Muhammad Ali. And Elijah Muhammad gives him his name. Then we go over to Jim Brown, who is on the set of a movie, who has reporters in his face and stops to tell them, I'm going to be retiring from football, and from here I'm going to be taking up my mantle as a movie star, which, as I said before, he's become a very fine movie star. Malcolm is at home, and his home is firebombed. And so he gets everyone out safely, and he's got his assault rifle with him, and he's ready to take somebody's heads off, but that doesn't happen. So he winds up checking into a motel with his family. And now it's on the motel that we see that he's looking at the television and seeing Sam Cooke sing this song that he more or less was asking Sam Cooke to create a sound and a song that would bring our people to the forefront. And he just kind of nodded. And then we went back, and then it showed that he had just finished his autobiography. And so now we return back to Sam as he's ending the song, and as it zooms in on his face, he's crying. And I'm like, how do they say when you cap off a movie or a good story? Fin. Fin. Fin.
I feel that song again was a moment that we were all waiting for.
Yes.
And it was the perfect way to end the movie. Perfect. That was perfect. But one thing, the last thing that I'll say about the movie is that I really appreciated the moment when it finally came out between Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, that where Malcolm reveals that I might be leaving the Nation of Islam. And this is right just after he had just convinced Cassius Clay to join. Yes. And so then he feels betrayed. And then the reporters come and they want to speak to Cassius Clay, and he's like, but I want you with me. Yeah. So right then, because that's when the blows were thrown. When they were fighting. But it was just, it spoke to the friendship that they were still able to have, even though Cassius Clay could have very well felt like he was fooled, betrayed. Yeah. But I want you standing with me. And when he said that, I'm joining the nation. I want you with me. I mean, that was a really, really great, beautiful moment there too.
Yes, yes. I want you standing with me. Oh man. This movie is so incredible, and it's not flawless, and I think that's what makes it so profound. And to know that this is a young lady's directorial debut, and to squeeze this talent out of these four souls, out of these four spirits, I don't know what to say. The movie ends with a saying, with a quote from Malcolm that says, "It is a time for martyrs now, and if I am to be one, it will be for the cause of brotherhood. That's the only thing that can save this country." He said that in February of 1965, and he was killed shortly after that. And the film takes us out. It takes us home, as I'll say, with the song "Speak Now" by Leslie Odom Jr. It's just, this film is just, it's just, it's incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, how did you feel about this movie, One Night in Miami? Let us know in the comments. Send us a like, show some love. And if we haven't given you a reason to subscribe now, then I don't know what you're waiting for, because we are going to do things like this and many more, and everything is just going to be just as exciting as it always has been for us. Check out some of our old videos and look forward to us bringing in new things. Until that moment, I am Javon.
I'm Kevin.
And we saw that. You guys have a good one. All right.
All right.